What's going on, Bottom Line viewers? It's Mitch here with the full cast of Bottom Line panelists. We got AC here back in the fold. Dilly Vanilli is back along with Kevole repping once again his Russell Wilson #3 jersey, Seattle Seahawks. Kevole's been getting a lot of hate, so I kind of want to see where we're going to go with the Atlanta Falcons today, because I know that Kev has been in the past a fan, but then not to the full extent of a fan of the Atlanta Falcons. So I want to see what we have in store from Kevole today for the Atlanta Falcons. But the Falcons, a team that 2 seasons ago went to the Super Bowl, last season actually did surprisingly well, considering a lot of people thought that they would sort of take a step back and not necessarily be a playoff team or be a team that was going to disappoint because of the high expectations, because they were now a team that was a contender. They were now a team that had one of the biggest collapses in sports history, not just in NFL history. So Atlanta, this is the 3rd year of them being a legitimate contender in a lot of people's eyes. It's going to be interesting to see what they do this year. Let's start off with Kev. Let's see what he has to say about Atlanta. I'm really intrigued here, Kev. You got me going these last couple videos.
Last year, I made a lot of flack because some people heard me saying that Doug Baldwin was better than Julio Jones. I didn't say that. I said the combination of Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin were better than Matt Ryan and Julio Jones at the time.
But also, you kind of mentioned, I took it as more, you were like, if I had Russell Wilson on my team, I'd rather have Doug Baldwin than Julio Jones. That's kind of what it was perceived, where it was just like, if you could take Russell Wilson with Julio Jones, you'll take that rather than Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin.
Who wouldn't? Well, I mean, Russell Wilson and Julio Jones would be a pretty good combination.
We're starting the Atlanta Falcons review by talking about Russell Wilson.
Yes.
Kev, if you couldn't get more hate comments, you just did, bro.
I just wanted to bring that up. That's probably where some of the hate is. But you look at this Falcons team, and there is some losses here. I think the loss of Taylor Gabriel will be a tough loss. They have been through a lot. Well, specifically, Dan Quinn has been through a lot. Of course, he was part of the Super Bowl that was part of the worst play in history. Mitch mentioned the biggest collapse in sports history. He was the head coach there. They did not get off to the greatest of starts last year. Really, there was a lot of stumbling, and specifically Julio Jones was having a tough time getting touchdowns. Like, he was getting targets, but he wasn't getting a lot of touchdowns. Then we go to the game against AC's Eagles. Last play of the game, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, the Eagles make the stop. The Falcons are out. I'm actually high on the Falcons, to be honest with you. I think that you look at this offense, it's a really strong offense. Their offensive line is strong. I think Mohamed Sanu and Julio Jones is a really good 1-2 wide receiver combination. I think 3-4, Calvin Ridley and Justin Hardy will be a nice combination. I think their defense under Marquand Manuel will be strong, and Dan Quinn is strong overall. You got Deion Jones in the middle. You got Tack McKinley and Grady Jarrett. Vic Beasley can be a little inconsistent. You've got a really pretty strong overall secondary. And you got a guy that actually I think is one of the better coaches in the league. I think, considering all that this guy has been through, to get this team back into the playoffs after everything that's happened, I think should be commended. I've said it before. I've said it. I'll say it again. I'm not the biggest fan of Steve Sarkisian as an offensive coordinator, but I feel like Dan Quinn has him under some sort of leash where there's a really good relationship between the two that leaves me quite confident. I think that we are going to be debating a lot this season. One of the debates that we're going to have is who's better, the Falcons or the Saints, because I do think that those are the two premier teams in the NFC South, and I think the Falcons are going to be one of the top teams in the NFC. I do have them in second place. I do have them as a #1 wild card, but I can see them doing some damage. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the division. But I do think that this team overall is getting stronger. They're getting Desmond Trufant back as well. They're getting stronger. They're not getting weaker. This team is growing, and I think they're going to be a tough out for a lot of teams this year.
And your record is?
I have them in kind of the 11-5, 12-4 range. I think that it's going to go down to the wire between them and the Saints. I think that it'll be a close battle for them to get the NFC South.
Okay, fair enough.
The 5 team, the number 1 wild card, though.
Fair enough. Dylan, what do you think of the Falcons?
I could agree with Kevin on a lot of points. Their offense is talented. There's a lot of stuff to like about it. Of course, Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu is a good receiver. I actually like the addition of Calvin Ridley in this offense as well, so I want to see what he can do. I know that they lost Taylor Gabriel, but that's going to help a little bit. Their offensive line is pretty good. Tight end situation, Austin Hooper, reliable tight end coming into this 3rd season. The biggest question for me is, can Steve Sarkisian run this offense? I know they're still going to do well, even if he struggles, but we saw the stats from 2016 to 2017 go down pretty drastically. And I know it's because people are saying, oh, Matt Ryan had a great MVP season in 2016. He can't do the same thing in 2017. Well, he had 20 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. It wasn't nearly as good as his 2016 campaign. And I think Steve Sarkisian had something to do with that. Can he do better in year 2? Well, I mean, I'm hoping so. I think this offense is very good. You got the 2 big running backs, Devontae Freeman, not Foreman, and Tevin Coleman, who are a great combo. I always make that mess up for some reason. And yeah, I like the running game, and Matt Ryan is a solid quarterback. Defense, I think, is one of the most underrated in the league, honestly. You look at the talent that they have here, and I really like some of the guys they have. Tat McKinley, 2nd year, he did very good in his rookie campaign. I think he'll do good in year 2. Grady Jarrett, like Kev brought up, had a big 2016 year, pretty decent all the way through. Vic Beasley's one of my least favorite guys when it comes to defensive players because he had such a big 2016, but then didn't produce as much. I'm not a big fan of him, but Deion Jones is a great middle linebacker that I like. Robert Alford, great corner. Ricardo Allen, Keanu Neal, one of my favorite safeties in the game, and Desmond Trufant is here as well. So there's a really good, talented, secondary, some good guys up front, and a great middle linebacker in Deion Jones that I really like and I think is very solid. So overall, I know this division is going to be tough. I know we're going to talk about the Saints later, and there could be a team to try to sneak in a couple victories against them in their own division. But I have them 11-5, which gets them, like Kevole as well, the 1st wild card. I think it's a very stat division that has another team, obviously the Saints, that are going to be just a little bit higher, but I think the Falcons are going to do well. They're going to play some big-time games. Their offense is very consistent. If they can get their consistency level with the offense, they should be very well, and their defense is one of the most underrated in the league, in my opinion. So, 11-5, personal wild card.
I just want to add one quick thing. I think this expectation of this offense to be a average 30-point team, they don't need to be, because that defense is solid enough that they can win games. They can win games with an average of about 20 to 25 points and still win.
And the defense was the stronger unit last year, I would argue.
Yeah. So I think that's the benefit of having a Dan Quinn and having a defensive coach, is they don't need to score all those points to win.
Yep.
AC.
I agree with Kev, where I think the conversation should be who has a better team between the Saints. And I think the Saints are getting obviously they have the flash with Kamara in that offense, and obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the game, Drew Brees. I know we can't really talk about New Orleans yet, but I just want to preface that for talking about the Atlanta Falcons, because I actually do think the Atlanta Falcons, if you look at this, besides the flash, they have a better roster than the New Orleans Saints. When you look at that defense, this Atlanta Falcons defense, I believe, is better, especially when it comes to linebackers. Obviously, the Saints have the flash in Marshawn Lattimore, but I'll take Ricardo Allen, Keanu Neal, and then also Trufant. They picked up Robert Alford, like I talked about last year, always seems to get better. Brian Poole, even for another slot corner. And then I like their 2nd-round draft pick, Isaiah Oliver. So that's kind of the secondary. I think they're going to go 12-4. The only reason I think 12-4 because I think they're going to win the division, and I think they finish one game higher. And it's tough to say the Saints are going to lose more than 5 games. So I have them at 12-4. I believe with Ridley, this offense is going to be at least top 5 in the league, I believe. And there's these 2 running backs too. Like, Saints get all the credit, but Freeman and Coleman have been a good 1-2 punch for the last 3 years. I think they're going to continue to roll. Sarkisian's going to figure it out. I think with everyone healthy, and even last season, the whole Julio stuff, if he was happy or not, was happening during the season. Hopefully that kind of goes away. He's in camp. He got his contract. I think moving forward, I think they're going to be 12-4. And if you look at their schedule too, obviously that Eagles game's pretty tough, which I do think, they might be able to surprise some people there. And then you have the Panthers and the Saints at home. You go on a 3-game homestand. They have a pretty easy schedule to start after those 3 games. Obviously, they play the Steelers, but Bucks, Giants, Redskins, Browns, Cowboys, and then until they play the Saints. So I think they're going to be able to win some games early and then maybe falter later on, but not falter enough where they're going to really get affected by it. So I'm going to go 12-4, and I believe they're going to win the division.
Okay. I guess I'm the negative Nancy in this video. I am the only one that has Atlanta missing the playoffs this year. Wow. I just think that with Atlanta, they are one of the 6 most talented rosters in the NFC, and I'm not going to argue that. I just think sometimes there are years and teams that are going to disappoint and are going to take a step back, and I think Atlanta is going to be that team. I just look at the offense and the inability. I understand it's year 2 for Steve Sarkisian, but the inability to scheme this roster into putting up points is just disappointing. Like that one play at the end of the game against the Philadelphia Eagles with the season on the line, you run the first installed play that you put in the playbook for your red zone offense. You do the classic West Coast rollout to the right, throw to the back of the end zone, Joe Montana-esque throw. They need to expand this offense, I think. And I think they're in a very difficult division. I do have them 10-6. I'm not sure if I previously mentioned that. But I just think that they're going to miss out just due to tiebreakers. I think they're my 7th seed right now. And there's always turnover in the NFL when it comes to the playoffs, and Atlanta's just one of those teams that it's going to happen to, in my opinion. I do like their talent. Like I said, I think this is one of the more talented rosters. The offensive line is pretty good. I still think that their guards could use a little bit of work there. And the right tackle, I mean, Schrader's okay. I wouldn't call him anything great, but obviously you have Alex Mack and Jake Matthews, who are both very good. Matt Ryan, let's not pretend that his MVP season was the regular Matt Ryan, the normal Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, he's had 2 seasons over 30 touchdowns. One of those was the MVP year. The other year was 2012, I believe. And really, besides that, that is the average, around 20 to 25 touchdowns, around 10+ interceptions. He's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. I thought he had actually a better season than a lot of people thought he did last year, but it wasn't spectacular or anything. And they definitely need to improve their red zone offense because he threw a lot of interceptions in the red zone for whatever reason. I think Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman are both awesome. Julio is great if he's happy. The thing that I've seen with Julio as of late in the last few seasons is just he's always banged up and nicked up. And if he is having to sit out for a couple of games, I think that could definitely hurt them. And then defensively, I think the big area where they concern me is their defensive line, because they lost a lot of players on the defensive line. They lost Dontari Poe in the middle. They lost Adrian Claiborne, and they lost another guy, but it's not coming to my mind. So they have Grady Jarrett and Takk McKinley, Takk McKinley was a 3rd down specialist last year. He's going to have to jump into the starting lineup, which he should. He's a 1st-round pick. Vic Beasley, I think, is a 3rd down pass rusher only. They moved to linebacker last year. It didn't work out. They had to move back to defensive end. So I think him and Derek Shelby will be sort of splitting reps. Brooks Reed is there. He's fine. I don't know about the defensive line being as good as it has been in the last couple of years, where that was really a underrated unit at getting after the passer. Besides, Jones and Campbell, I'm not really sold on their linebacker depth, although I love Deion Jones. And I think their secondary is probably their best part of their defense with Desmond Trufant, Brian Poole, Robert Alford, Isaiah Oliver, Keanu Neal, obviously. So I think that's their strongest unit, but I'm not exactly sold on their defensive line, specifically against the run, and then just having that rotation they've always had. So for me, yes, I think the talent is there. I think the roster is there. I'm not exactly sold on their coaching 100%. And I just think there are teams on the rise this year in the NFC. This is a very difficult conference. This is a tough division. So I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to maybe be one of those teams that are on the outside looking in when it comes to the end of the day. But obviously you guys disagree.
Well, and obviously I think this is based on everyone who watches the channel know you're a Cam Newton guy. And I'm assuming when we get into our Carolina Panthers, you're going to have them somewhat high. I think maybe us in thinking that Atlanta is going to be good is because I believe Bucks are going to be a shit show. And the Panthers, I think if Atlanta Falcons are going to be very good, I think the Panthers take a step back, and those could be easy wins as well, making it a 2-horse race rather than the Panthers in there. Obviously, the Panthers did make the playoffs last year. I just think maybe we're all maybe not as high on the Panthers, which makes us more high on the Falcons.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like I just can say that man. This is more about the NFC's strength and just the turnover in the NFL, really, than it is about Atlanta. Because I have when I looked at the playoffs in the NFC, I said I almost had 5 for sure teams, and I was just deciding on my 6th team, and I just decided on one team over the other. That's all I was deciding on, basically.
The one thing I will give the NFC South is they do play the AFC North and they play the NFC East. So we don't know, obviously some people are high on the East, but I think after thinking about it a bit more, I think, Mitch, you are right where the NFC East might not be as strong as people think. So
yeah, it obviously depends on some of the games they play. Like, the Giants could be good, or
exactly, and then the AFC North, right? Like, you never know with the Ravens and the Bengals, but those teams all are going to be playing. Yeah. And the only difference, I think, is their kind of flex game, or what I guess your flex game. New Orleans plays the Vikings, and the Falcons play the Packers.
So everybody except for me has the Falcons in the playoffs. Bring on the hate comments. I'm here for them. Bring them on. Okay, 10-6 for me. Kevole has them 11-5.
Yeah, 12-4, 11-5, somewhere there.
Okay, and Dylan has them
11-5,
and AC has them 12-4.
Yes.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more Falcons and NFL content. It's Mitch of The Bottom Line View. Peace out.